Okay, good evening everyone, and welcome along to this evening's Rushcliffe Borough Council Planning Committee meeting. I'd like to remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. A recording of the meeting will be available afterwards on the Council's YouTube channel. In addition, under the Local Authorities Executive Arrangements, Meetings and Access to Information England, Regulations 2012, other people may film, record, tweet or blog from the meeting. The use of any such images or sound recordings is not under the Council's control. May I remind councillors to please switch your microphones off when you are not speaking, and also to switch them on when you are speaking. So, welcome everybody. On the table tonight, we have planning officer colleagues. We have Mrs. Dodd, who is the planning manager for development, Mr. Pettit, who is senior design and landscape officer, Mr. Elliott, who is a senior area planning officer, Mrs. Pearson, who is an area planning officer, and our borough solicitor, Mrs. Walker. So we'll go straight into the first item on the agenda, which is item 1, apologies for absence, please.
We have apologies from Councillor Edavine and Councillor Georgiou, and substituting we have Councillor Ellis.
Thank you very much. Welcome to Councillor Ellis for substituting. And item 2 is any declarations of interest, please. Anyone wish to raise anything? Councillor Hetfield, I think you.
Sorry, Chair. Yes, declaration of interest for the Edwalton Community Centre. I'm a ward councillor, so I'll be excusing myself.
Righty-ho. Thank you very much. And I don't think there is any others, so thank you for those. So, minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 14th of September. Those of us who were here, are we happy with them? Yep, thank you. Also, I better sign those ones. Right, so we'll go into the reason we're here, or the main reason we're here this evening, which is the planning applications. We have 3 to decide or to discuss tonight, and the first one is a tree preservation order on 42 Wilford Lane, West Bridgford. And Mr. Pettit, you'll talk us through this, please.
Hello everyone. We've protected a cherry tree in the grounds of 42 Wilford Lane. A detached property with a garden set back against the road, and then a further parcel of land to the north of the property. The tree preservation order was made as a result of a planning application to construct 5 dwellings. This was subsequently withdrawn, but one of the local councillors asked us to consider protecting trees on the site. And we had a look and felt that the front garden contains a number of conifers which we haven't protected, but we felt the cherry tree did enhance the public realm. This is looking west towards Compton Acres and Wilford, and the tree we've protected is the one sort of growing out under the street light. Again, looking west on Wilford Lane, it's got a good tree line character, Wilford Lane. The trees to the west of this site are quite young, associated with the recently constructed health centre and army cadets, and they're starting to have an impact. And then when you look, well, this is looking directly at the property, and we'll consider some of these issues in a moment. You've got the Leylandii, which you can see is sort of failed, and there's exposé in the core, and the trees growing around a street light. But when you look to the west, you've got some larger mature trees, most of which are protected, and these run from this part of the site all the way down to Loughborough Road. Again, this is the tree line character, and you can see the big cedar tree that's protected, as are many others. We assess the public amenity value of the tree, and you might be looking at the pictures of the cherry and thinking it's rather sort of unobtrusive, but you can see that in the spring it does really produce quite an attractive display of blossom, and that's what really caught my eye when assessing it. You know, I think it does really enhance the public realm. So the owner of the property has objected for 4 main reasons. Firstly, he thinks the tree could pose a risk due to branches overhanging the road and pavement. He also considers it a risk due to restricting visibility, the risk of falling branches, impairing access to the road and pavement, interfering with infrastructure such as the street lights. In 2015, Storm Doris caused the Leylandii that we saw just a moment ago to fall across the road. And this tree required immediate attention and ongoing observation. He also argues that the trees in the garden have recently been described as in poor condition, and that's associated with the latest planning application and the tree survey that accompanies it. So the tree preservation order is intended to ensure the long-term retention of the cherry tree, but it does allow applications to be made to prune the tree or even fell it. And the county council have guidance on how much clearance over a pavement or road should be allowed. 2.6 over the pavement and 5.3 over the road. So it would be, perfectly reasonable for us to allow an application to prune the tree to maintain that clearance. There are circumstances where vegetation is left unmaintained to such an extent that the county council can serve notice on an owner requiring immediate work. And in those circumstances, they don't need to make an application. The minimum work required to fulfill the county's notice is exempt. Trees growing next to a road are a common occurrence, and we quite often protect them because the whole purpose of a tree preservation order is to protect trees and enhance the public realm. Obviously, the Leylandii failed, and I appreciate that would focus the mind of a tree owner. Again, the legislation covering tree preservation orders does allow for emergency work. So if the cherry was to fail in some way, the owner could take a photo of it, do the work, and notify us as soon as possible afterwards. Equally, if it was to die, they can give us 5 days notice, and we can agree, the tree meets what's known as a dead or dangerous exemption, and again, allow work in short order. So overall, the tree survey that accompanies the latest planning application classifies all the conifers in the garden as category C trees, trees of low quality, but it considers the cherry tree that we've protected to be a category B tree, which is a tree of moderate quality. And in these circumstances, it's entirely reasonable to protect it. So in summary, Wilford Lane's got a tree line character. The tree contributes to that. And we feel that, an application to prune the tree would allow repeat works to ensure it doesn't affect the highway. Therefore, we feel it's recommended that the tree preservation order be confirmed.
Okay, thank you very much. So we don't have any speakers or guest speakers on this item, so we can go straight into any questions, comments on a decision. So does anyone have any? Councillor Thomas, please.
Yes, as I understand it, if work needs to be done to the tree, it can be done through application and so on. I see no reason not to put the TPO on, and I move the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're moving the recommendation as shown, and Councillor Walker?
I'll be pleased to second that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mallender.
I was just going to offer to second it. What does concern me is that if the tree dies, what worries me is that it might deliberately die, if you see what I mean. So I'm very concerned about keeping an eye on it. So I hope there's people that are doing that. Thank you.
The concern is noted. And Councillor Calvert.
Thank you, Chair. I must say it looks better in spring than in autumn, that's for sure. I had a look at it today, and I noticed that there's a lot of ivy growing up the trunk and up around the branches as well. So would there be an insistence on that being removed?
The tree owner would be free. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, that's my fault.
The tree owner would be free to remove the ivy. They don't need to seek permission for that, but we can't make or encourage the removal of the ivy. And I suspect one of your colleagues might argue there's some wildlife benefit in terms of the ivy.
My understanding was that ivy could damage a tree quite seriously, kill it off, if it was not treated in some sort of way. Clearly, that might be.
It doesn't really. A tree that's weak can sometimes be overtaken by ivy, but ivy's not the primary cause. There's normally a second reason why it's not keeping pace. with the ivy growth. Perhaps on a small tree, there can be some competition. Yeah.
Okay. Chair, there's one other issue I just want to mention. I noticed that there's would appear to be a yew tree that's growing almost inside it as well on the other side from the conifer.
I haven't noticed the yew tree, but it is surrounded by conifers. But we felt the cherry provided the greatest public amenity.
I thought the yew tree would look pretty good if the cherry wasn't there. But you have to.
Okay, thank you. I got the distinct impression Councillor Mallender wanted to come back in on that.
I was just going to correct the facts that ivy does not penetrate the bark of trees, it just grows up them. If you have a very weak tree that's reaching the end of its life, it could cause a weight problem in the winter. If it's a very large amount of ivy, that is part of the natural succession of life. Ivy is an incredibly useful source of nectar and berries for throughout the winter. If it wasn't for ivy, you wouldn't have hardly any bees surviving throughout winter.
Right.
We've got some ivy outside our house and it's absolutely covered in flowers and covered in bees and late butterflies and so on. Without them, you don't have birds and all the other things.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Councillor Mallender.
There's a lot of rubbish talked about
And
ivy.
Councillor Calvert, you set something off there with the ivy, but we are here just to discuss the preservation of this
Okay,
particular.
well, thank you very much for that little bit of education. Very helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Mallender. Right, does anyone else wish to make any comments, or shall we? We've had the recommendation moved by Councillor Thomas. Yes, moved by Councillor Thomas and seconded by Councillor Walker. Nothing else to add. So let's have a show of hands. Those in favour, please show. Yeah, I think that's unanimous. That's unanimous. So no one against, no abstentions. So thank you very much for that. So we will just move the chairs around a little bit. Just before we go on to the first of the actual planning applications, can I just check, colleagues, you've received either on the email and in paper the late representations that we've had sent to us. So we've all received those. Yep, thank you. So yes, we go on to our next application, which is the Edwalton Community Centre. And this is land southwest of Cornelia Grove, Edwalton. And this is a construction of a new single-storey detached community centre, bin store, with parking, access with gates and associated external works. And Mr. Elliott, oh, welcome you. Yes, because you're back. You've rejoined the Borough Council, haven't you? Indeed. Yes, so welcome back. And so over to you for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is the application site. It's adjacent to phase 7 of the urban extension and to the north of Sharp Hill Woods. And this is the aerial view of the general area. You can see that the spine roads are coming through into construction, and you'll be able to see Sharp Hill Woods just to the south here. Just to give you an idea of the levels of the site, this is 2 photos taken from the top of Sharp Hill Woods. You can just see the roofs of the newly constructed dwellings in the middle of the picture there. And these next photos show the development as it's being constructed. I'm on the main spine road through at the moment. In the background, you can just see the ridgeline coming up with the trees just here, which is the Sharp Hill Woods. This is the layout plan, main access through into the site with the proposed community centre building just here and the associated car park to the left-hand side here. This top plan is taken from the community park application, which has been permitted. Shows the wider area and wider landscaping. The light brown area here is the allotments. Lighter grey is the car parking, and then the darker grey is the proposed community building just here. Just to give you an idea of the levels again, this section plan shows the levels through the site. The closest residential property here, plot 120. And then the proposed community building in the centre here. The thick red line is the natural area or natural levels of the site. And then the green is the change in levels which were approved as the community park application. These next slides are the elevations of the community building. This is the northwestern facing elevation. It contains the main entrance into the community building. This is the southern elevation. You can see the PV array that's on the south facing pitch of the application building. Then on the north, notable feature here is the roller shutter door, and that would gain external access into a storage room that would be used for the Friends of Sharp Hill. And this is the floor area, which shows the different uses of the application building, and the large community room, which would be the main activity area. Meeting room to the north. There are some externally accessed toilets just here. This is the storage room that would be utilised by the Friends of Sharp Hill. So overall, this is a single-storey community building with associated car park. It has been assessed against policy 12, the core policy, and assessed as acceptable. There's been no objections from technical consultees, and it comes before you with a recommendation for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And we have one speaker on this item who is the ward member, Councillor Perrick. So if you'd like to come to the table, you can address the committee. And just so I'm sure you know how it works, but so you've got up to 5 minutes to address us. As soon as you press the right button, the red light will come on, the clock will start counting down. If you're still speaking at 4.5 minutes, we'll just tell you there's 30 seconds left. So over to you when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak in support of the much needed community centre in Edwalton as part of the Edwalton strategic urban extension. I have been approached by various members of the community in Edwalton in favour of this community centre, and I speak passionately on behalf of all of them. Edwalton Community Centre, a project that not only aligns with the National Planning Policy Framework, but also adheres to the core strategy and local plan part 2 adopted by Rushcliffe Borough Council. This initiative is not just desirable, but the true embodiment of a collective commitment through a thriving, inclusive and sustainable community. First and foremost, the NPPF, as the cornerstone of planning in England, emphasises the importance of sustainable development. The Edwalton Community Centre is at its core a model of sustainability. It has been meticulously designed to minimize environmental impact, utilizing green technologies, energy efficient systems, and sustainable construction materials. In a sense, it mirrors the NPPF's dedication to preserving the environment for future generations. Additionally, NPPF places emphasis on the promotion of social and community well-being. The Edwalton Community Centre epitomizes this commitment. It will quickly become a hub for social interaction, education, and recreation, catering to the residents of all ages. This not only strengthens community bonds, but also fosters individual growth and well-being in accordance with both local and national planning policies. Turning our focus to Rushcliffe Borough Council's core strategy and policies, we find complementary framework that resonates deeply with the Edwalton project. The core strategy seeks to create sustainable, vibrant, and inclusive neighborhoods. The community centre is not just a building, it is a symbol of these values. It is a place where residents can live, learn, connect, and thrive within an environment designed to enrich their lives. The Borough Council's corporate strategy identifies 4 priorities, one of which is the provision of high-quality community facilities which meet the need of residents while contributing to the financial independence of the council. This centre will assist in meeting that need. Furthermore, Rushcliffe's core strategy emphasizes the need for spaces and facilities that contribute to education, recreation, and leisure for new neighborhoods. The Edwalton Community Centre is such a facility, fulfilling the policy's vision of providing essential resources that enhance our residents' quality of life. This facility will include the much-needed external toilets, allotments, and a storeroom for the Friends of Sharp Hill Wood. So instead of having to store equipment at their homes, they have a place to store, toilet usage, and a meeting area. Accessibility and inclusivity are at the forefront of all our policies, and the planning application for the Edwalton Community Centre reflects these principles. The project is designed to be accessible to all members of the community, regardless of the age, ability, or background. It aligns perfectly with our commitment to create an inclusive and equitable society. In conclusion, the community center enhances the area of Edwalton and provides the much needed community facilities which were identified as part of the wider site's allocation. The proposal provided both economic and community benefits which will benefit the wider borough as a whole. I ask that members vote in line with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perrick. Well within your 5 minutes, so thank you for that. So we don't have any other speakers, so Councillor Perrick's fully in support of the application, and she points out the relevance to National Planning Policy Framework, our own Rushcliffe Local Plan and Local Plan Part 2 and Core Strategy, and refers to the sustainability of the building and the fact that residents have been speaking to her, saying they're very keen to have it. And and also referred to the sustainability of it, and including this toilet it's near to the allotments, which is really convenient for the storeroom that's proposed for the Friends of the Sharp Hill Woods. So I think that's probably what we just heard, didn't we? So do you want to add anything to that? Probably no need to. No. Okay, so we can open up to discussion and decision. Councillor Ellis, please.
Thank you, Chair. This proposal seems to me to be full of benefits and without any disadvantages. If I were a resident of Edwalton, I personally would be in favour of it. So when the time comes, after others have made their comments, if they wish, I will move officers' recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Could you just pop your microphone off? Sorry. So I've made a note of that. I don't know where, Councillor Thomas. Sorry, who was next? Yeah, Councillor Thomas. Sorry, I didn't see. I need to look around more, don't I? So I'm sorry about that. I'm not ignoring you. So Councillor Thomas.
Oh, hi. I had some comments questions I'd written down before I got here, and I can give you those, but I also think we perhaps ought to go through the points in this document that's been tabled from the Sharp Hill Action Group so that we have fully considered those. I don't know if the officers would like to do that or if we should take them one by one.
Well, it might be better to just not necessarily refer to documents, but if you've got any particular questions or queries in general, just raise those.
Okay. So the first question is really, are there electric vehicle charging points in the car park, and has that been considered, or at least having the infrastructure under the car park to provide them at a later date? The second question is about the area outside the on the south elevation. There's an area. Is that intended as a meeting space and amenity space? And if so, what is the surfacing, and is there any shade? And the question I had before was the gate to the allotments. Is there access from the car park to the allotments? I wasn't quite sure that the gate, whether it was in the right place really, or whether there is a gate. So those are the questions I had before. So the questions I've got since I got here are, has the consultation on this application been done according to how we normally do it and according to what we need to do? Is the actual principle of putting the community centre in this location, has that been established already, and is that a planning matter for us to consider today, or is it not something that we're here to consider? And the same issue really for the size of the community centre. Is that providing what's required, and is that something we should be considering or not? Is there any destabilisation of the slope and any problems with flooding? And did you want to comment, did officers want to comment on the views and vistas? And the other issue is access on a narrow residential road, and whether, if there are more cars than fit in the car park, whether there's going to be issues on amenity for residents. Yeah, I think that was it. Thank you.
There's quite a few points to go to there. So I'm sure I know the plans are up on the computer here. So the electric charging points, query about the south elevation parking area and the gate to the allotments. Those are the first ones we were wondering. So.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll answer some of the points, and then I think Gareth will answer some of the other ones, if that's okay. So in terms of electric vehicle charging, it's not shown on the plan, but I think I would suggest we add it into the condition about the car park, that we should have that as part of the plan for the car park to identify any electric vehicle charging. That would be in line with our other policies. So we can add that in if councillors would like us to. So consultation we've been asked about. We sent letters to 106 residents. Appreciate not all the plots are built out yet, but of those that are, we've sent 106 letters out, and the stakeholder group at Sharp Hill have also had these plans presented to them prior to the application, and the Friends of Sharp Hill have helped feed into these designs in terms of the meeting room and the toilets and things and the storerooms. So we've done that level of consultation. You are here to establish the location as part of the application. It's a full planning application, so you can look at the location and make comments on that. That's for the committee to determine if it is the right location. Just by way of background, the community facilities were originally envisaged to be within the school. So within the outline planning permission for this part of the site, there is a condition that requires them to be within the school. What we found is that the operation of the school is such that because of safeguarding and various issues, it's very hard for them to accommodate any daytime use. My understanding is there's some evening use of the school, but in the daytime, there's too much conflict with having children on the premises, which is why this alternative has been suggested.
The size, is it providing?
Yeah, so the size, I think you have done some research on the size, haven't you, Gareth? I can pass that back to you.
Yes. So the size has come through consultation with local community groups, and has been governed slightly by what has been successful, similar in other areas within the district, and what's worked, as well as what the community groups wanted in terms of space required for the meetings, for the meeting rooms, and the main community area. And I think views and vistas you mentioned as well. Yes. So this is a single-storey building. There was a section plan with the levels, so you could see. Yeah, that's. Yeah.
That one?
Yes, yes. So that top plan there shows how the building has been cut into the gradient of the site. Those levels have already been approved as per the community park application. But as you can see, that the levels are quite steep and they rise up above. So the views out towards Sharp Hill Woods would be maintained as they are a much higher level, and the community building is a low-level single-storey building.
Okay, had we, I think there was a question about the access to the allotments gate.
Oh,
yes. So.
Yeah, sorry, it's hard to see on this plan. It's in the corner. If you can see where the mouse pointer is,
Yes.
There is an indication for the gate there into the allotments directly from the car park.
I just thought it might be better not behind a car, especially a disabled car, in terms of equipment that people have to get through, perhaps. If it could go straight down the middle, it would be perhaps a better.
There is a sort of buffer.
Yeah, so
area
there is a pathway around the edge of the car park, and then it seems to lead straight into the path between the allotments there.
Okay, as long as that's been thought about. And the other one was outdoor space adjacent to the community centre for use of, and whether or not there's any shade. Thank you.
So the area to the south is where the bank is. So there isn't a huge amount of outdoor space associated with it anyway. If it's because of well, I suppose the bank does come in a little bit. There isn't anything on the plans that shows a shade, so there isn't anything on the application for shade.
So what is the surfacing on that area to the, is it the south of the building?
So if I can refer you to the recommended conditions, there is a landscaping condition, and the surfacing would be covered within that landscaping condition. So that detail will come forward post-decision if approved.
Okay, could we have a maybe like an advisory note or something to draw out the possible benefit of having outdoor space that could be used there and planting to provide shade?
I think so, yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we've made a note of that. Right, Councillor Calvert.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I very much welcome a community centre being developed in this area for the Edwalton Sustainable Urban Extension. I'm assuming that includes the development east of Melton Road as well as the west of Melton Road, and also originally it was going to be 1,200 and 300 houses, and now we're talking about 1,800. I just want to check on the number of houses that this community centre is expected to cater for. So very happy about the construction, but there's three concerns I have that are in the report. The first one is about the County Council Highways, as a Highways Authority, their response, because paragraph 15 says that there's no objection raised. So I had a look at the list of the documents that were online, and I read what the Highways Authority actually said, and they said that they require a transport statement to be submitted as part of the application in order to ascertain if the trips to be generated by the proposed community centre will have significant impact on the highway network. The information contained in the design and access statement is insufficient to determine the impact of the development. So I would just seek clarification on exactly where the Highways Agency stands. That particular statement that they gave was on the 25th of August, so it's not that long ago. Secondly, it's the issue about the location. It's called a community centre, but yet it's located at the most extreme northwesterly part of a very, very large site. So it doesn't feel like a centre to me. We've also had comments about the size, and I question whether it's the appropriate size for this extra number of houses. There seems to have been an over-reliance on the primary school. That's been referred to in the opening remarks. I would have thought it would have been obvious from the beginning that a primary school couldn't act as a community centre during the daytime, but so be it. My final issue really is around what steps were taken to consult with the residents and the different action groups, the Sharp Hill Action Group, who have written this late document, and the Friends of Sharp Hill Wood as well. So if you could give me some information on that. And then the sort of final thing that came out in the earlier discussion was the location is supposedly sustainable for cycling and walking. What cycle parking is being provided along the car parking? Thank you.
Okay, there's a few to go on there, so we'll pick up the answers on that. I think well, yes, we'll just look through the report. I think with regards to the car parking, there's a condition, isn't there? I think condition 5 probably helps us with that. It says prior to the proposed development first being used or occupied, parking management scheme shall first be submitted to and approved by the Borough Council. So that's in condition 5. That helps, I think, helps your query about the car parking, I think. page 30.
It is the condition there that will satisfy that.
That's my understanding. I'm sure we'll
Yeah,
get confirmation,
okay.
but I just thought I'd answer that while officers are looking at to answer to your other questions. Yeah. So sorry, I'm doing your job for you here, aren't I? So
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yes, in terms of highway comments, you're quite right. The initial comments from the Highway Authority were asking for travel statements to come through. There was some back and forth and negotiation with the Highway Authority on the specific type of information that they were after, which they clarified. We had discussion and provided that for them. They then recommended that condition, which is condition 5 that you'll see. So further details to come post decision. Should be approved on that one. And then condition 16 is specific to cycle storage as well.
yes. So actually, sorry. Yeah. So condition 16 does refer to cycle storage. Yeah. So that does that answer your queries?
Apart from the issue of location.
Yeah, we can pick up on that.
Yeah,
Emily, if you,
Yeah. So in terms of location, yes, it was originally proposed to be part of the school site. That was set out in the 2017 permission. The site is located near to the school site. It's located near to the community park. It's located fairly close to the play park. So for that reason, we believe it is a fairly central location within that development. It's difficult to see where else it would fit because the rest of the site is now pretty much consented. So the centre has already been dealt with for retail. So this location was chosen because of its proximity to the community park. When the bus is running, it will be very close to the bus route that will run through the centre of the site from Melton Road and out the bus gate at the top of Musters. So those are the sort of reasoning behind that location that's been put forward.
okay, thank you. Councillor Mallender.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of things. Do we know whether the cycle storage is covered, please? That's the first thing. And when is this bus going to appear? I was just wondering when, because, you know, they've been talking about it for some time, but it doesn't seem to. So is there a sort of timetable for the bus? I don't mean, when it's going to, a timetable for when it's going to happen. Thank you.
So the bus query.
The bus query
Yes.
is a good query and is a very long-standing issue that we've been trying to unlock with the county for quite a long time. So that the issue is that because the spine road isn't complete, the bus can't get all the way through and out the other end. We have had discussions with the county about how we can find space for it to either turn round halfway through the site, or is there a wide enough turn that it can go round one of the sort of estate roads. So we are trying to progress that for residents, but it is quite slow progress, and it does also rely on county and ourselves getting to an agreed position. So I'm afraid I can't give you an exact time of when that will work, but we're trying to bring it forward more quickly than waiting for the whole of the spine road to be put in.
So it's still on the agenda. Councillor Mallender.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot something else as well. And the other thing is, I agree with Councillor Thomas that there should be some green space around it. And is there any, is the hard standings permeable? That's what the other thing I was going to say. So, because of possible flood risk.
The hard standing, I assume again we're looking at conditions
Yeah,
on
it's
that,
all
aren't we?
conditioned, and I think you mentioned the cycle store, whether it'll be covered. It's all conditioned, so we can make a note that that's obviously what councillors are looking for when the discharge of conditions come in, and take that forward.
Okay, Councillor Wells. Councillor Chaplin.
Thank you. I wanted to thank Councillor Thomas and Councillor Calvert for asking lots of questions that I was going to ask, so thank you. Steve did mention the consultation. I was a bit confused as well, because this has come from somebody from the Sharp Election Group who is saying he hasn't been consulted, and you said that you have. Could you just clarify that for me, please?
Yeah. So we haven't sent a formal consultation letter to the Sharp Hill Action Group. We have sent letters to local residents in identified houses. The Sharp Hill Action Group and the Friends of Sharp Hill are involved within the Ed Walton stakeholder meetings. So in terms of it being presented before the planning application, they have been aware of it through that. I think there's been 3 meetings that I'm party to records of, where representatives of that action group have been at those meetings and seen these plans presented and evolve. But no, we have not sent them a formal planning consultation. We are not, it's not a statutory requirement. They're not a formal statutory body that we're formally required to consult with. So we've fulfilled our statutory duty. And as I say, they are aware of the proposals through the stakeholder group at Sharp Hill.
Can I just carry on from that? So if this does go ahead, will those stakeholders groups carry on to sort of talk about how it's managed and how it's used?
So, yeah, my understanding is that that is a group that is continuing on with various parties, residents, developers involved, who'll be able to continue to have that dialogue.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Chair. I am for this application, and I'd like to pose we put it to a vote. I would like a condition that the floodlights are solar panel lights. Thank you.
Okay. Did you get that? It's a suggestion that's about solar powered.
Panel,
Yeah, solar powered lights.
I'm just wondering, well, could we make it an informative, just because I'm not sure what the technical, whether, you know, about how much sunlight they get and things like that, but we can put it on as an informative instead.
That would be the better way to do it, because you have to be realistic about it. But although there are solar panels there. Now, Councillor Ellis, I think, did you want to add anything else, or just remind us that you'd move the recommendation?
I was going to say, Chair, that I said I would move a recommendation to accept this proposal when there had been an open discussion. So I hadn't done so, but I don't know now whether Councillor Wells has actually beaten me to it, in which case, if he has, I will second it. But either way, the motion goes forward.
Oh, yeah, we just need to pick up on a couple of the points before we get to that.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify whether the motion is as per the report, or would you like to add the additions that some other councillors have mentioned? So we had an informative regarding solar panels on floodlights. We had another informative regarding shade and how the outdoor space would be designed to be shaded by either plants or other means. And we had a request to make sure the condition for the car park included electric vehicle charging.
So I'm assuming, Councillor Wells, that following what Councillor Ellis has just said, are you formally moving the recommendation?
Yes, Chair.
And also the suggested informative about the cover for the cycles. Yes, yeah, we've got that.
Chair, and I think Councillor Manander asked for permeable car parking surfacing, and that was, I think the officer said that could be an advisory as well.
That I think is covered by the condition in place already, but we'll just get confirmation on that. We're looking at condition number 6, and yeah, you're right. There isn't specific reference to.
We can talk about, yeah, so we could add in the details of the type of surface.
Yes, so we could add that into condition 6, if that's all right, if that's acceptable, which I think it is.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Ellis, are you happy with to second the recommendation with those additions? Right, just for the record there, because his microphone wasn't on, but yes, he is happy to second the recommendation with the additional conditions and advisories. So, right, happy to go to a decision on this then. So we're all clear what we're doing. So show of hands in favour, please show. Thank you. I think that's unanimous, isn't it? Just for the record, no one against. So thank you very much for that. I have to say, it's that I can think of quite a few other areas in Rushcliffe who would love to have a community hall like that. I think it looks really, really rather super, and I wish everybody good luck and good use of it as well. It should be great. Look forward to seeing it when it's built. So yes, Councillor Perrick comes back, and thank you, colleagues. And our next application is Tithby Grange Farmhouse of Bingham Road, Tithby. And this is the change of use of a property from a current C3 use to C2 to convert into a children's home. And Mrs. Pearson, you're going to lead us through this. And again, welcome to Rushcliffe, or welcome back to Rushcliffe.
Welcome to. I've not.
Oh no, you've not been here before, have you?
I'm a newbie.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Well, welcome to Rushcliffe. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair mentioned, this is an application for a change of use of a farmhouse which has got a residential use C3, and the proposal is to change it to a children's home which has a use class C2. You'll note that the site is accessed from Tithby/Bingham Road, and it is in quite an isolated rural location. It is within Tithby Grange Farm farm complex, and you'll note that the farmhouse is located here, and it's surrounded by a mixture of agricultural and commercial properties, buildings, and there are 2 residential cottages just located here. In terms of the agricultural and the commercial buildings, the building here has recently been granted planning permission for a B8 storage or a Class E light industrial use that wouldn't raise any issues with amenity in terms of noise or dust or any emissions. And the 2 smaller buildings just to the southwest of the site, they've also been approved for the same commercial use. They are actually occupied and are actually currently being used for those. Most of the agricultural buildings surrounding the site appear to be unused. There are a couple, and you'll see some from some photographs, there are a couple that are actually still being retained. Just an aerial shot of where the Grange Farm complex site is. And again, here, this shows you its relationship with the nearest settlement. So Bingham is here, which is, I think, to the boundary is about 2.4 kilometres away. And we've got Cropwell Butler and Cropwell Bishop further here. And they are about 2 kilometres away by road. The Tithby Bingham Road is a country lane. It has no footpaths, it's unlit, and there are no public transport routes along it. This is just a quick picture to show you where the access is. It's a gated access and it's shared by the agricultural and the commercial properties. The farmhouse at the moment is vacant, it's not lived in. Again, these are just shots showing you the main highway and the fact that there are no pavements nor any street lights. that's looking north, and that's looking south. These are just some general shots of the site itself. There will be a parking court, which is a hard standing area located here, and these are agricultural buildings. There is a small pedestrian access through some hedgerow to get into the farmhouse site. This is the front elevation of the farmhouse. You can see it's a large detached property, and it's set within some quite large curtilage. You can see that the land rises slightly up towards the front elevation. Again, another shot, you can see the relationship with the agricultural buildings where the parking court is here, and this is the main farmhouse building. This is a side elevation looking into the site. This is looking towards the rear garden. You can see that there is quite substantial curtilage to it, and it is lawned. There are a few outbuildings, and it is planted. This is the rear elevation of the building, and this is the side elevation overlooking what would be the parking court here. This is the agricultural building that's been granted permission, which is just behind the farmhouse. It's granted permission for the storage and distribution and industrial use. These are the two buildings further to the southwest that have been approved for similar uses. You can see they're occupied and are currently being used for the purposes they've been approved for. These are the agricultural buildings that are surrounding the farmhouse. As you can see, some are still in use. And this is just a quick floor plan showing that there are going to be no external alterations to the building proposed at all. There'll just be some tweaks internally to make sure that they can create the 5 bedrooms. So turning to the proposal, it is for a change of use from what is a residential property to a children's home. The children's home would be Ofsted registered and would have up to 4 children between the ages of 6 and 17. And they would attend the local schools and use the local services and facilities in the nearest settlement, which is Bingham. There would be one-to-one care, so there'd be 4 staff working a shift pattern. And there would also be therapists and social workers visiting the site during the week, Monday to Friday. The children's home is also a therapeutic, will provide a therapeutic service to the children or the young people that would be resident there. You'll see from your agenda that there have been no objections noted from the technical consultees. We've had a letter of or representation of support from the local ward member. So therefore, the proposal raises no concerns with regards to impact on the amenity of occupiers or users of the surrounding buildings, nor on highway safety and parking provision. And the future amenity, for the future residents of the children's home is also considered to be acceptable, notwithstanding the various uses roundabout. The commercial uses have got conditions on them which would restrict the hours of use, and therefore would be really working during the working day. So the main issue before us is that the proposal fails to comply with criteria A of policy 14 of the local plan part 2 document, which requires the proposal for specialist residential accommodation, which this is considered as falling within, to be within an existing residential area, close to good transport routes, shops, community facilities and open space. As previously noted, and from the plans that and the aerial shots that we've provided, you can see the site is in a very isolated location, some distance from Bingham and Cropwell Bishop and Cropwell Butler. There are no public transport routes along the main road. There are no footpaths, and the road is unlit. It is quite a road that does have some quite high speeds on it as well. Therefore, the recommendation is that the site is in an unsustainable location, fails to accord with the policy criteria, and therefore the recommendation is for refusal on the grounds which are set out on page 41 of your agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have two speakers on this item, and the first is the applicant. So Mr. Stanaway. So if you'd like to, you saw how it worked earlier on. You've got up to 5 minutes. So as soon as you're ready, just press the right-hand button and the red light will come on and we'll start counting down. So over to you.
Mr. Chair, thank you, everybody. Abbey Green TCS, we started the company in 2018. It was set up myself and Caroline. We've worked in the residential care sector with children for over 30 years now. After many years of feeling dissatisfied with the service that young people were getting, we formed Abbey Green Therapeutic Children's Services, and it was to provide a quality therapeutic service by qualified trained carers for the children we care for, so they feel loved, nurtured, and can heal from the trauma they've experienced. We've based all our homes in Nottingham due to the fantastic support we receive from Nottinghamshire Children's Services, Education, Health Services, and support some of the most vulnerable young people within our community. There are many reasons for children being placed in residential care. We provide care for some of the most complex young people from the age of 6 to 17 years. All of our children have suffered complex early life trauma and attachment difficulties. They may be subject to physical, emotional, sexual abuse, neglect, suffered death of family members. They may have also been witnessed and subject to domestic violence, parental drug and alcohol abuse from birth, chronic neglect, and has been hidden for years before the children have got the help they need. This emotional upset can manifest itself in many dysregulated pain-based behaviours such as verbal, physical aggression, running away, destructive behaviours, school refusers. We see more often self-harm, social anxiety, low self-esteem, and other emotional difficulty that impact on daily life and function. Unfortunately, by the time the children are placed into residential care, many have exhausted foster placements, and generally the added experience of rejection and shame. We have children that have been placed with us now between 4 and 8 failed foster placements before they've been placed in residential care. Good quality residential placements are needed to support the young people and enable them to attend therapy, to come to understand their early life traumas in a safe environment with skilled, highly trained carers and therapists. All of our young people have access to music, dance, movement, integrative, humanistic and cognitive behaviour management therapy. Therapists are an integral part of our care and what the young people need. At present, Nottinghamshire has 986 looked after children. 466 are placed out of county. 99 of these are in children's homes in areas that include Manchester, Somerset, Essex. There are around 80 children that Nottingham placements would prefer to place in Notts County and would like to bring close to home. At present, there's 24 children that are in unregulated placements, and all of these would like to be in regulated children's homes. And that information was provided by Michelle Butler from Nottingham Children's Services, who's the placements manager. We understand the reason for refusal to support the application is due to being in a rural area with no transport links and buses. Our children are transported to and from schools, outings and clubs. Each child has a minimum of one-to-one care. The majority of the children are at an age where parents would transport them anywhere that they wish to go. The children will need time and space to leave the house due to trauma they've experienced and attend outside activities. So they're going to always need that support when they go into the community. We provide therapeutic homes as part of the healing process for young people that we have other homes in Stanton-on-the-Wolds, Egmonton, which are remote homes. There is research and benefits for the young people having access to green spaces and the benefits that how it improves cognitive and emotional development of young people. The home in Tidby Grange provides beautiful outdoor and indoor space for young people. They can access the large grounds with play equipment, trampolines, football nets, and nature. We have seen deer and hares on the actual land itself, and lots of wildlife for the young people. Young people have the opportunity to grow plants, vegetables, freedom to run and play. This is all part of the therapeutic process and allow the children to learn how to play. All of our young people have underlying mental health issues due to attachment and early life trauma. This includes social anxiety, which as a nation we've seen a massive increase since the COVID pandemic and lockdown. They do not like going to loud populated areas or accessing public transport. We provide one-to-one care and have vehicles in the home to transport young people to and from schools, activities and appointments.
30 seconds.
The home in Tidby is surrounded by great transport links. Bingham Town Centre The new Bingham Marina is a 5-minute car drive away. The A46 is a short distance, which allows easy access from the south of the county to Newark and Trent. We currently employ 60 people from the Nottingham area and provide extensive training and upskill the workforce, gaining MBQs, MQ3 and 4s in residential childcare level 5 management awards. The home will create 14 new full-time positions for local people in Nottingham and career opportunities and job satisfaction as before. And not forgetting the 4 young people that will also have a place they can call home. Sorry for going over.
No, that's okay. Understood. Can you just press the button? So thank you, Mr. Stanley. I think we heard you nice and clearly there on your points, your arguments. So our next speaker is the ward member, Councillor Birch, please.
Good evening, everybody. I'm speaking here in support of this application tonight. Basically, I think it's the right thing to do. I can see the guidance is written for a very clear purpose, which is to try and ensure access to amenities and transport links. But in this case, I think this property more than meets those requirements. We have, as has already been said, it's 5-minute distance from Bingham Town Centre. I live right by the medical centre. It took me 5 minutes, and both journeys I went, once at rush hour, once in the day. It's 3 minutes from the centre of Bingham. The A46 is a 3-minute drive away, and the A52 is a 2-minute drive away. These are a national speed limit roads that lead to it. They're 60-mile-an-hour roads. There is fantastic access, and as we've already heard, this rural location will be absolutely fantastic for the children that require the care. There is a bunch of research, peer-reviewed research from a variety of sources, the Ofsted and the NSPCC site. And as I say, it's beyond any reasonable doubt that rural locations are fantastic for the outcomes for these children who need these locations. And I have a young daughter myself, and I'm sure there's many parents in the room, and I can barely imagine some of the things these kids have had to go through. So to answer some of the points that have been raised tonight about the proximity of the farm buildings, I actually grew up in a rural location, and I was lucky enough to be ferried around by my parents like millions of other kids are. I never went on buses growing up. The lack of public transport, particularly in this case where the kids will be taxied to and from where they need to go, is irrelevant. In terms of the farm buildings, they're not unusual in an agricultural setting, being so close to the building, and in fact the property I grew up in, anecdotally, the farm buildings were closer to the house, so I don't think that's an issue. There is a large garden on site, which I think is a very important aspect to this, and as has already been mentioned, these kids will have access to nature and a variety of other things that they wouldn't get in a residential setting. There's been no objections from Wyverton or Bingham Parish and Town Councils, and basically what I want to try and communicate tonight is I think this decision is wrong. I think the area needs this. There are other houses in similar rural locations across Nottinghamshire where they don't have this sort of arbitrary guidance, and as I say, I think it's the right thing to do to pass this application first and foremost for the children that require it. So that is what I wanted to come here and say tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Birch. Well within time and very clear as well. So thank you for that. So yes, so we have no other speakers. We heard from Mr. Stanaway, the applicant, told us about his experience, 30 years plus in these sort of care homes for children, and explained to us about the complex lives and difficulties that the children will have experienced. And this location will be good for their therapy and helping, and he, whilst he understands the reasons that have been given about the transport issues, points out that the children will have one-to-one care and all the time, and also if perhaps a family was living there, then there could well be children in a family environment facing the same transport issues. It's pointed out the pleasant surroundings, and the children could be, for example, growing vegetables and etc. in the grounds, and as we mentioned, there's some anxiety from youngsters as well, and it's good for therapy. And also we've got access to the A46 and A52 to get to Bingham. And Councillor Birch made very similar points. He fully supports the application and again understands the guidance, but picks up the points that where the applicant and he feel that transport and access is not an issue for the proposal. So I think that's covered all the points we've heard. Do you want to pick up on any of those, or probably not? No. So colleagues, we can go into discussion. Who's got the hand up first? Councillor Walker, and then I better go to, and then Councillor Calvert. I must look that way. So Councillor Walker first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Paragraph 22 of the report is it's always there, and it's the most important part of the report. What it says is that we determine the application according to planning policy. And what we've heard tonight from the speakers essentially are arguments that the policy is wrong. And that may be so. It may not be. But it is the policy. And that's the basis on which we determine the application. Policy 14A is clear. It's specific with regards to stipulating the criteria that should be met for this type of use. It's really clear that the application isn't compliant with that policy insofar as it's not an existing residential area, there aren't public transport links, and there aren't nearby amenities. So, notwithstanding those arguments about the appropriateness of the policy, those are the reasons why I'm intending to support the recommendation of the report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Walker. We had quite a few other speakers before we go down that route. So Councillor Calvert, and then Councillor Perrick, and then Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. I'm referring to the late representation by Mr. Stanway, and in particular the planning officer's comments of that representation, and it's again reflecting on the first paragraph of the planning officer's comments about policy 14 of the LPP2. And at the end of the paragraph, it says it should be highlighted that an authorised C2 use as requested by this application would allow any C2 use of the building, not just that identified in the application. And my query is whether there's any flexibility there with a new application which could add restrictions as to the use, such that any future use would have to be of the nature of this particular application. Because I can't see any other way around.
So yes, so if you could, yeah, possible future use.
So at present it's submitted as a C2 use, so it could go to a nursing home or something similar. If members, or if the recommendation was to approve, we'd probably look to put a condition on to say it shall only be used for this purpose, this number of children. So that is one option. Nonetheless, it would still be contrary to policy, even if it was specified down as only being for a children's home.
Is that you have a ponder on that? And righty-ho. Councillor Perrick, please.
There are around 986 children in Nottinghamshire who are in care, and often they're placed as far as Kent or Scotland because we don't have enough residential placements in Nottinghamshire, including Rushcliffe. A lot of these children are uprooted from the local areas and have to leave their local schools simply because the accommodation is over 100 miles away. As a result of them being uprooted from the local area, they don't stay in touch with their birth families, which leads to isolation and lack of social support, and thus young people getting into a negative spiral. A sufficiency duty is placed on local authorities Under the Children's Act 1989, Section 22G, the sufficiency duty requires local authorities to ensure that there are sufficient placements within the geographical area to meet the needs of children and young people in care, and to take steps to develop provision to meet the needs of all children and young people in care locally as far as it's possible. In 2010, the government published statutory guidance on securing sufficient accommodation for looked after children, DCSF 2010, as part of a suite of statutory guidance documents, which together with the care planning, placement and case review regulations 2010 set out how local authorities should carry out the full range of responsibilities in relation to care planning, placement and review for young people. So my first question would be, are the key stakeholders, which is Nottinghamshire County Council, who have a local sufficiency and commissioning strategy which specifies that they will place more young people within the D2N2 footprint and avoid placing outside of the D2N2 footprint, have been consulted? And secondly, our key stakeholders are children in care via the Children in Care Council. Have they been consulted? Because they will be the people who will actually be using this facility.
Thank you. So we had some detailed information there, but also a couple of questions. So have the County Council been consulted in their guise as the children's care?
They haven't. So, Chairman, we're dealing with a use in our role as a planning authority. So our role is to consider it in planning use terms. So no, we've not consulted the County Council or the Children in Care Council. The application is put forward by a private enterprise as any other business. So we have dealt with it purely on a use class basis.
Is that helpful, Councillor Perry?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas. Sorry, who was next? Oh, sorry, Councillor Ellis. Yes, sorry.
I approached this with a genuinely open mind. I could see the actual sense of the officer's recommendations, but I must say the two speakers have convinced me that that is not really a relevant concern in this particular case. So I would tend to support the application. I don't think that the reference to paragraph 22 was particularly relevant because it does allow for exceptions to the rule. And I think that planning committees must have some discretion in determining how far the national guidelines apply to any particular application. So I am firmly in favour of this application, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Right, well, before there are a few other speakers, I think. So who was next on the list? Councillor Thomas.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is quite a complicated application, I think. The only thing that seems to be standing in the way of this application from what the officer has said is policy 14. I think if you look at the wording of policy 14, it talks about C2 accommodation, which this is, but it also talks about specialist accommodation. And all the paragraphs describing the purpose of policy 14, it's all about building specialist accommodation for things like homes for older people and disabled people, and very reasonably is wanting to place those in the community, in the heart of the community. And that is the purpose of that section of policy 14. I think Councillor Birch has argued that this is in a sustainable location, and I don't agree with him. It's not in a sustainable location. It's clearly not a sustainable location. but I would question whether this is specialist accommodation. It's residential accommodation. It's not been modified in any way. So it is not specialist accommodation in my view. And so it could be argued that policy 14 doesn't have to be followed in this case. It is C2 accommodation, but it isn't specialist accommodation in any sense. It's normal residential accommodation. So I think that would possibly give some flexibility for allowing this appeal. There's the issue of how it's what happens to it afterwards. And the officer has said that it would be possible to put a condition on to restrict the use afterwards to what it is now. But I also think any other application that came forward for specialist accommodation in this location would have to have planning permission because it only accommodates 4 people, and it's very unlikely to be anything other than 4 people that would fit the bill and fit this accommodation without it coming forward for planning permission. There's also a clause in the tenancy agreement, I've noticed, that requires the tenant to get planning permission to convert it back to residential when they finish with the building. And I can't see any reason why it wouldn't be converted back. My concern really about this application is whether or not it is, and I take Councillor Perrick's point about sufficiency of provision, but is this a suitable location for this type of residential care? And obviously we've got the information provided by the applicant, but there has been no independent ratification, if you like, and I can't see anything in the paperwork that says that it's reasonable to put children out in the countryside and it's good for them. And I wouldn't want to approve this application against policy 14 without having that information. I think what I would like to suggest is that we defer the application and seek further justification for the benefits to these particular people in residential accommodation of being in this particular location, because in my view, that would outweigh the policy 14, particularly given the fact that this is not specialist accommodation, which is what the policy 14 is about. This is normal residential accommodation. Thank you.
Right. Okay. I'd be hesitant to defer an application because we have the application in front of us, and we have to make a decision based on what we have in front of us. But I hear the arguments that you have made. Do you want to pick up on any of those, or just to advise us a bit? Okay, fine. So now, who was next on the list for speaking? Was it Councillor Perrick? Do you want to come back in on this? It's okay.
So policy 1 of the local plan has a presumption in favor of sustainable development, where it states that any adverse impacts of granting permission would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies in the NPPF taken as a whole. This development, in my view, is extremely sustainable, and I'm not persuaded today that the disadvantages of giving permission to this development outweighs the benefit it brings. On the contrary, this development has significant benefits for children and young people. Most of the children accommodated in therapeutic residential homes throughout the country don't attend local schools. However, they're supported to attend schools, which is a reasonable travel distance from their accommodation. By approving this application, by agreeing to approve the application to then going against the officer recommendation, children can stay in Nottinghamshire and continue attending the schools they are part of. Lack of public transport is not a valid argument in this case, as children will need support to travel, and their carers will support this as they don't have the independence nor the confidence to undertake school journeys on their own. Policy 14 and Policy 10 are not applicable to this particular kind of development. Also, by approving this development, we are meeting Provision 5 employment provision and economic development, because there will be a number of local professionals who would be hired to provide therapeutic services to children. And it also meets the aims of the corporate strategy, which is quality of life, where we are ensuring that young people have the opportunity to live in their local areas, and also they have enough opportunities and resources for them to realize their potential, which this particular development provides. So I would be I would propose that we vote in favor of approving this application and going against the recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Perrick. Councillor Ellis, do you want to come back? Because you did start this ball rolling with that, didn't you? And then I'll come to Councillor
Yes,
Chaplin.
thank you, Chair. I would just like to second Councillor Perrick's proposal.
Right, so you're in effect making a recommendation to approve, bearing in mind you would need to consider things like conditions and that would go along with any approval. So you need to keep that in your mind. And Councillor Ellis, you're aware of that, so you would second that. Just hold those thoughts. Councillor Chaplin.
Thank you. This just makes me so angry that we have to leave the care of our most vulnerable children down to private companies being able to find somewhere to put them. Where are we as a country that this is the case? Anyway, obviously their concerns are going to be high on our list of priorities, but one of the things that helps their care is to have good staff. And one of the things I do know about children in care is that they do need a stable relationship with their staff. I also know that staff turnover in children's homes is very high, and I would be concerned about attracting staff if they've got to get along a road with no buses, they can't cycle, they've got to drive. That's already cutting down the number of people they can attract to that job. So that would be one of my concerns. Policy 14 is there for a reason, to look at sustainability. And yes, I agree, if that was a family with 4 children living there, they'd be coming and going in their car, but we'll be talking about, I mean, it sounds brilliant that they're getting therapists and people coming to do lots of things with them, but that's just more journeys, more car journeys coming up and down that road. So yeah, it is a difficult subject, but I think there are lots of things to take into account.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry. Had you? Oh, sorry, Councillor. Yeah, you must make it, when you want to speak, you must make it clear, because it's sometimes hard to see. Well, maybe it's me. So, Councillor Malander and Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. As has just been said, this is a really difficult situation. So, I mean, looking at the actual property and the grounds and the wildlife there and the play equipment and so on, I mean, it is idyllic, and it would be a very good place for people who are traumatized to be. What I'm concerned about is exactly what's just been said, really. What about staff access and access for therapists and other people who might be visiting? I'm aware that if children are going to specialist schools, they quite often have a taxi coming to fetch them and take them to the school rather than using public transport. However, whether that would entirely be the case for all the children that were there, especially that it goes up to 17-year-olds, and I believe if it's the same as normal sort of rules for this, if you have disabled young people, it goes up to 19. And for them to be in a very rural location might not be quite so attractive to them. They might want to be more with friends and so on. And the other situation is, I don't know whether this would be the case, whether it would be more that the young people would have to travel to a contact centre somewhere else. But it's contact with birth parents, who I would say, I'm making this assumption here, may be more likely not to have access to a car. So it's a really difficult situation. For those children, it might be a wonderful place to be, but it could be that they might lose contact with birth parents. On the other hand, if they're in Manchester or wherever, they're even more likely to lose contact. So it's a very difficult situation. I still don't really know how to vote on this, but what we could do with doing is having some more information. So I'm going to go along with what Councillor Thomas has said, which I think we should defer it until we've got, perhaps there might be a minibus in place to take staff there, or there might be a taxi company that's used in order to, what provision would be made to counteract the difficulties, given that there are also some positives.
Yes, Councillor Ellis.
Point of order, Chair. Is staffing a material planning consideration?
That's a very direct question, and we'll get an answer on that.
I know what the answer is, Chair.
It's not.
Well, yes, it can be. In terms of numbers of staff.
Sorry?
In terms of numbers of staff, how you're going to accommodate their travel, which is what this policy relates to. It relates not only to the children's journeys, but also to how those staff are going to get there and back. So yes, I would say that the movements of the staff is a material planning consideration.
I think not. If this were a purely commercial application, whether the application would result in a profitable or an unprofitable company would not be a material planning consideration, and this falls within that category. The second point of order is that so much of the discussion so far has been pure speculation, and that is not acceptable in a planning committee environment, in my opinion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Councillor Thomas.
Point of order, Chair. I did before it was moved that we accept the application. I did move that we deferred it, and you said you didn't think that was allowed. As far as I'm aware, it is possible to defer applications when further information is required. And in my case, I'm particularly keen to know that it's okay, I'm just particularly keen to know that it is in the best interest of children to be located in this location. I take the point about independence and so on, but I think that is relevant. If we're talking about overriding policy 14, I think we have to have that behind us. So I would go back to my the fact that I moved that first. Thank you.
Right.
And I would second that.
Okay, so I've got that. I think we'll just refer to the borough solicitor for about the process. We'll just take some advice on that.
I'm sorry, Chair, could I just add, Councillor Parrott did also ask if key stakeholders had been consulted, and that chimes very closely with what I'm asking for. Thank you.
Right, thank you for your patience on this. It is very unusual to have a deferral in a planning committee, and if or in any situation really, but if I understand, I can see that you've moved it, and who seconded that? It's Councillor Manager. If you're going to make that recommendation second, you need to give very and I know you've spoken already about it, but you need to give specific reasons as to why we should do that, and then we would then have to take a vote on whether we're deferring. So while you just think about that, Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I wanted to sort of speak to that in a way. I think the reason we're getting ourselves in a pickle, in my opinion, is because we're trying to make up planning policy on the hoof. And that is not the job of the planning committee. It's not our job to make up the policy. It's not our job to correct the policy if we think it's there. Our job is to determine the application according to the existing policy. Reason we're getting ourselves in a mess. I'll ask colleagues to remember what our job is and what our job is not.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I concur with what Councillor Walker said, and I have to agree with several of the members on certain points, but disagree on others. 4 children living where they miles from anywhere, basically. Who's to say that it's best for them in the middle of nowhere? Is it best for them within a community so they can get more practice at social interactions? I don't know. I'm not an expert on that. But what does worry me about it, where they're going to be put, miles from anywhere, or 2.5 kilometres, not able to travel, relying on other people to get them from A to B. They're not, although the gentleman said they're going to be living as a family, it's not the same as a family, if you see what I mean. And the staff issue as well may not be a material thing, but I think it could create a problem getting staffing to some far-flung farmhouse where there's no public transport. I think public transport's a key thing. But also for the children who would want to do extra activities away from school once they're starting to make friends at school, how do they get there? They're relying on other people. And I think policy 14 is there for a reason, to have them within a community, to interact with that community. I agree with what Councillor Walker says, and I will be voting against against it to turn it down. I'm quite happy to propose it if somebody else will second that.
We've already had a couple of proposals we need to get through first.
I think the issue with deferral is it is permissible, but it must be for a reason that is achievable within a certain time scale. So I think at the minute the reasons for deferral are a little vague. That more information. I understand where you're going, but you would need to be more certain in that we want a report from this kind of expert. And at the minute, I don't think that's before us. If you could give us a bit more.
I can provide more specificity, perhaps with the help of colleagues. I think if we're referring back to the issue of sustainable development, I would also point out that this isn't development. There are no buildings being put up, and there's no external work being done on these buildings. So talking about the issue of sustainable development, we're talking about a sustainable location or a sustainable development. This is not development. But I think what we need is for the key stakeholders to have been consulted, and that includes Nottinghamshire County Council, Children's Services, as to, and the Children Care Council, as to whether or not they would support a children's home in this location, and B, whether or not it would be of benefit to the children that were located there. I think that's the key point for me, really. So I don't know if anybody has anything else to add.
Councillor Martin.
Yeah, I also think that because we've been suggesting that it's refused, and this is often the case when this comes to planning committee, in that there's cases where the recommendation is to refuse, and then the problem is that if we vote against that as a planning committee, then all those conditions have to be added on. So we do have to think about that, sort of whether we can put on conditions for provision of some sort of transport for staff, which is a consideration because we've had things refused before because of lack of public transport for staffing in various premises.
Thank you.
Yes, I think certainly the transport issue is something that can be considered as part of your decision. I think what you call the stakeholders of looking at Nottinghamshire County Council's children's services, that's not relevant to the planning question before you.
Okay, that's the advice we have. Right. Well, we need to move on, don't we? So, okay, Councillor Perrick, if you're quick.
We've spoken a lot about policy number 14, but we also have the Rushcliffe Sustainable Community Strategy prepared by the Rushcliffe Partnership as part of the Rushcliffe Local Plan Part 1, which states that one of its priorities is supporting children and young people. It clarifies that children and young people will be listened to and have access to a full range of local positive activities and facilities. I do not believe that the views of looked after young children and young people have been taken into account via this local plan 1. And they are the key stakeholders. Nottinghamshire County Council is the key stakeholder. So that is my view. And over here, we are making a very difficult decision. We have to weigh the needs of traumatized children who have been exposed to significant abuse and are at risk of losing contact with the birth families, being placed away hundreds of miles away from their home, and with Nottinghamshire County Council already struggling with local D2, N2 placements. So on the balance, what would you want? A child who's placed hundreds of miles away and in Manchester, Scotland, or a child who is placed in a rural location? And yes, I take the point about sustainability and not being enough transport, but the sustainability argument will be lost completely if the child's placed in Manchester, because then he or she would have to travel in a taxi anyways. So why not place him or her closer to home?
Okay, thank you. Are you wanting to speak, or shall I'm going to go to the defer? Quickly. Following Petvi's question, do we know if the children are from Nottinghamshire or they're from other parts of the country? I don't think we know that, but I don't think that we it doesn't really come into the no.
Sorry, I will just, if that's okay, Chairman. I think this is a really emotive subject. It makes your heart break, doesn't it? And I get that. However, we come back to those hats that I talk about in training. You are here as borough councillors. You have a set of policies that it sounds like you might not agree with, but they are there. They've been adopted. It is a material change of use, so it is a form of development. Officers don't believe it's sustainable, which is why we're making our recommendation. You've had legal advice regarding deferral. We do need to know the material planning reason you're seeking that advice. So it has to be a planning consideration. It has to be something that is within the remit of planning, and our powers don't always extend as far as you might like. So we do need to be really clear if that's what you are planning to vote on. But I would just sort of echo some of the points that have been made, that we do have a policy, we have adopted that policy, and we should be making our planning committee decisions in accordance with that.
Right, okay, but it is complex, and as you rightly say, it is very emotive as well. But there are so many rules and policies and guidelines we have to follow. But we've had there's a danger of getting confused here. Well, we are confused, aren't we, about what we're actually voting on. So I now accept the fact that there will need to be a vote now on whether we defer or not, because it has been moved and seconded by Councillor Thomas and Mallender, I think, seconded it. But you again, remember what we've just heard about, it has to be for material planning reasons. So, but we've had that moved and seconded. I think let's take a vote on whether. Yes, so I need to know the material reasons why you think we ought to defer. Councillor Thomas.
we don't have sufficient information with the application to determine the application. That's my position. And well, the information I haven't got is whether it's to the benefit of these children to be placed in the countryside as opposed to being placed within a community, which is what policy 14 requires. That's the information I require.
I would just say that I don't think the deferral will help there, because I don't think we have a specific agency to go to who can answer those questions.
Right. With that said, so we've had the advice.
Suggested the County Council Children's Services and Children in Care Council.
I think it goes back to the advice we've just the legal advice we've just had. So I'll still take a vote on whether we're going to defer or not. But the
planning reason is that we need information on how what the resolution is to provide transport. Is there some way of providing transport in a sustainable manner, such as a minibus for staff, so that problem is not that material consideration?
Right, we've thank you for your patience on this, but this is a really important situation. I don't know whether the local. Oh, right. Emily, if you could just.
Thank you, Chairman. So in terms of the provision of transport, that's something that you could condition if you wanted to move in support of the application. You could have a condition about a travel plan or details of how staff will be transported to the site. So you could do that by way of condition if you moved to support. I think we do come back to this point that the information about the benefit to the children of the countryside location is not really part of our remit today as a planning authority to have in consideration of our land use policies.
So we could go directly. Someone's got to make a recommendation. So there was comment made that there was going to be a recommendation to approve by Councillor Ellis, I think.
Councillor Perrick moved to approve.
Councillor, that's who it was. Yes, it's Councillor Perrick, and then seconded by Councillor Ellis.
Yeah.
But you might want to move that and then consider a travel
plan condition and limit to children's home.
Councillor Ellis.
Yeah, the proposal, which I seconded, was to reject officers' recommendations and approve the application. Yes, yeah.
So are you?
Yeah, that's what it takes to approve then, yes.
we need to be clear what we're voting on. We're moving. We're not voting on the. Yes, there's the deferral situation. There's the deferral situation as well. We need to. Councillor Thomas, bearing in mind what you've just heard about the advice that if someone has moved to move approval along with a transport plan, conditions, etc., would you still want to go ahead with a request to defer?
Yes, please. I think my point is that the weight, if you like, given to policy 14 has to be dependent on the benefit of being in a community in this situation. And that's the information that hasn't been provided with the application. I believe it should be. Thank you.
Okay, that said, then I can see there's quite a strong feeling for the deferral request, but we need to take a vote on that. So I will take back what I said earlier on about not doing a deferral vote. We will take a vote on whether we should defer or not. So the first thing we're going to vote on now is, do we want to defer the meeting to get that further information? That's been moved by Councillor Thomas and seconded by Councillor Malinder. So a show of hands in favour of a deferral, yes or no. Those in favour, please show. So that's 2, I think, and for the record, those against. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 against. So that the motion to defer has fallen. Okay. So now we need to move on to. If you could recap the advice we had about the possible.
So we've got an alternative motion to accept the proposal, so to grant planning permission, and we have talked about having a condition on there to manage the travel for staff members, so a travel plan. We did also talk previously in the debate about whether you wanted to restrict that down to a children's home, so CTU specifically for children and for a maximum of 4 children, whether councillors want that to be part of the motion.
Could the travel plan include birth parents as well?
Yes, it could. Yes.
Yes. But if they don't, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
To include. Yeah. So as the mover of the recommendation on that, so the mover and seconder, Councillor Parrick and Ellis, are you clear and happy with those conditions that you might be wanting to add to that recommendation? Okay. Are you clear? Are we clear on it? Is everyone else clear on this? Are we clear what we're doing? So we have a motion in front of us to grant permission along with the additional conditions that we've just been talking about in regards to the transport plan. Anyone else wish to say anything, or shall we go to a decision on this? Let's have a show of hands. So we've got the recommendation to approve of those conditions. Can we have a show of hands? Those in favour, please show. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that what, 6? 1, 2. Yeah. Those against. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, any abstentions? I don't think there are there? Right, okay, so that means permission is granted with those important conditions. Could I just say that before people start departing, that we've heard a lot tonight about policies and limitations, all the rest of it, which is absolutely right. But that's one of the reasons why you have a planning committee, is to look at any application in front of you on its individual merits or otherwise. Oh yes. I'm just summing up about this application. So I thank you for your patience on this, but it was a very important application, and I understand completely the points that have been made about policy. I am usually very, very reluctant to go against a policy, but at the end of the day, we had an application in front of us. We've had a lot of arguments for and against. Material planning reasons have been given. We did venture into the what's the word I'm looking for? Not emotional, but they not necessarily planning reasons, which is understandable, but we have made the decision. So we move on to the final item on the agenda, which is a noting item, which is the report on recent planning conditions, planning appeal, I beg your pardon. Do you want to there are a couple of things we want to just report on this, aren't there?
Yeah, I don't normally comment on appeals unless there's something particularly interesting, but I would like to draw members' attention to the Lamere Lane application, which the Borough Council dismissed, and the inspector upheld that decision and dismissed the appeal. It was a drive-through application up at the top of Melton Road, and we have a lot of local feeling about it, a lot of concerns about highways and design, and it was a very good win for the council, I think. So I just wanted to draw that one to your attention.
Thank you very much. And anyone? Oh gosh, my word. So no one on this side of the. So Councillor Perrick and then Councillor Thomas.
I just want to thank the officers for the wonderful representation that they did to the inspector, on the basis of which it got dismissed. So thank you to the hard work of all the officers.
And well, thank you for that. And I'm sure the officers will share that with their relevant colleagues who are involved in the case. And Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, I agree with that, and well done. It's always nice when appeals go that way. But I was very surprised to see that this one merited a press release, really. And I didn't realise that we did that when we won planning appeals. And what's the criteria for doing that and not doing it?
I don't know if we've got a specific criteria. I think it's ones where we've had a lot of public interest, that we like to note certain decisions, either planning decisions or planning appeal decisions. But I don't think we've got a set criteria as such. It was just one that generated a lot of local interest.
Public and local interest, Councillor Thomas. Right, okay, any other comments? So that's the final item on the agenda. Thank you again for your patience and input, and I'm sorry that we had to stop and start, but I'm sure colleagues understand the reasons behind it. So thank you, and thank you for your understanding. We'll close the meeting at 7:50. Thank you.